Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much, Rosanna, to bring me here at UPenn in my first visit to Philadelphia. Very excited to be here. Thank you very much for the beautiful introduction and also to give me a little bit the feedback of the jury after 6 years or 7 years. Now it's always interesting to know what's happening in a competition. Let's start with the presentation. For tonight, I will present you 5 projects, 3 built projects and 2 projects that are ongoing. Quite recent. I didn't start with the old one that has been mentioned, and I try to present with these 5 projects where are we moving now, essentially. So all the projects are related with culture, our fine art museum, and one is an artist residence here in US, and it will be probably one of the first projects here in US together with the project for the Art Institute. That honestly I would love to present you this very important project for us, but it's as you can imagine very confidential, and still we have to wait a few years more before to present it. So let's see. Okay, a few years ago, we presented our monographic exhibition in several universities in Italy. And we titled this exhibition of our work On Continuity. And I have to say that we spent a few months to select a name, a title for the exhibition. But at the very end, we decided to name it, to use this word, continuity, because probably it's a word that resumes in the best way our goal as our architect. We always tried to, and these are some images of that exhibition. I think what is important in our project, it's really to find this difficult balance between the specificity of a place and the autonomy of the form. I think this dichotomy is at the base, really at the base, is the fundamental of our practice. From one side, we are absolutely conscious that a building should relate it with a context, with the different reality that exists in a place. No? It's very, let's say, contextualistic in a way. But from the other side, we are also we understand that architecture is an artifact, has a value per se, independently from the context. No? So, and our work continues to move between these 2 opposite situations, no? To belong to a context, to belong to the different realities that exist in a context, because a context is we interpret it in a very broader way. No? But at the same time, architecture has its own rule or internal value in some way. So, and in this way, the way in which we try to stay between these 2 opposite sides is to work in continuity with something. We always try to insert our project in a line, in an historical line in some way. And it is important, we always try to work with what we just found in a place and reuse it and transform it and modify it. No? And this permit from one side stay, let's say, across time. No? We have this memory in some way that give identity to a place, and they continues into our project. But at the same time, we try to mark a new step into a story. You know? And I think these are, let's say, the conceptual basis of our practice. So after this exhibition, we wrote a short text that title on continuity, and inside of this book there are several simple drawings like this one, in which you have always a pre-existing building there on the right. I think I cannot move from here, and then no, the pointer doesn't work here. Oh no, no, and the other is a project related with this pre-existing. No, so and like these are, I don't mention, no, but there are forms of an old castle in Germany, a Palladian lodge in Italy transformed in a library, the Venetian influence for a house in Beirut. We will see this project in Belgium. No, so all our projects in some way really try in a simple way to okay, maybe it works better. Oh, okay, okay, maybe it's better. It's always tried in some way to find the identitary element of kind of pre-existing element and transform it into something else. And this drawing, for example, is the drawing for the Fine Art Museum in Cour. That will be the first project I will present tonight, in which the same identitary element that exists in the old pre-existing building are in some way extract and reuse into the new extension. I forgot to mention also that the majority of the project I will present tonight are extension of existing buildings. No, no, it works. Oh, yeah. Sorry. So the first project is the Fine Art Museum in Cour. Cour is a small city in Switzerland, close to Zurich. I think the mic. This is the original building from the 18th century that has been renovated by Peter Zumthor. They had it, the two winter garden there, and it's a bizarre building because has a very clear Palladian influence, but there is an orientalistic decoration outside and inside, for a long story because of the former owner of this villa. And so the plan of the house was very inspired by La Rotonda with a double symmetry, very clear. So, and in some way, this idea of an absolute architecture, try an absolute architecture, something that describe an ideal in some way, has been one of the first elements that mark in some way the strategy of the project. So we understood that the project should work in some way as a diptych with the pre-existing building. Again, the extension is centered above a double symmetry, extract the geometry of the whole villa, and it tried to reduce all the complexity of a fine art museum to something very, very simple. It's conformed by two cores. I think I stay here, because it's. I'm so sorry, but it continues to be. No, so it's as I say, it's conformed by two cores, simple, one private, the other public, that it conform at foyer, a small public plaza. So, and I like very much this drawing because it's a very synthetic draw. We try to solve the complexity with just a few things, very simple, but very, very precise in some way. So, as again, what we have tried is to find the right scale of the building inside of this very sensible and delicate context. And in a way, I always say that this project is essentially, as again, is a specific project for the place, but because in some way it's used the same element of the pre-existing building. The new extension is a kind of new Palladian building. You will see the plan later, with this kind of facade, which is a bas relief, that it's related with this kind of orientalistic aspect that conform the pre-existing building. No? And this is what we understand for this idea of to work in continuity with something. No? Try to reuse or extract or select some very local element, very specific element that give identity to a place and build a new narrative for a new project with this element in some way. No? And this permit at the same time to give to stay in an historical line, but at the same time there is always a gap in some way, always a deviation, you know? And this permits the architecture to move forward in some way. You know? What was really important to know is that the place to build this new extension was very, very small, and we tried to really condense at the maximum the project, reduce at the maximum the footprint in order to give a little bit of space around the extension. And this space is crucial because it's a kind of it's explained for us a kind of civic attitude. All our projects really tried to create public space, and all our projects are really modeled by the reflection above the public space. And also in this project, which apparently is very compact, just a very restrained object and box, what for us was really important is the space in between the building that permit that the building breathe in some way, no? And find the right scale to insert without any kind of friction or difficulties the building into the context. It's also another important aspect of this project. So, and in order to achieve this small public space, the programmatic organization was quite radical. We proposed in the competition to put all the exhibition gallery in the basement, essentially, and the emerging architecture is just dedicated to the public function. It's pedagogical space, foyer, etc., etc. So apparently our projects are quite restrained and simple, but there is always a kind of very radical interpretation of the program, no? Like in this case. No? The foyer, this small public space, declare the relationship with the pre-existing building. The facade of the historical building is the facade of the new foyer, of the new building. From there is a very generous stairs that go down in the -1 level, and here you discover this Palladian idea that inform the project. No, the museum is composed by a sequence of very simple rooms with different proportion, and that are organized in with a different combination. And this plan could be a Palladian plan. If you look at all the villas made by Palladio are always a combination of a sequence of rooms, no, in some way. Some images of this level, and here there is the underground connection with the spaces that have been restored by Zumthor in 1982, I think. And when we arrive in the lower level, is dedicated to temporary exhibition, you discover here our effort to reduce the project to just the structure. There is just the two cores, as I mentioned, one public, the other private, and the space in between is a flexible space for exhibition. There's nothing else, no? It's try to achieve in this case the maximum size that we can get for the exhibition and reduce architecture to its minimum in some way. No? So in some way, co-structure and structure and programmatical use are combined in this simple, very, very simple form. And here's some other images of this space. For sure, there has been a huge attention to the light, to the artificial light, and the proportion of the building, because the visitor go down almost 18 meters under the ground. So, as I say, the other important element of this project was this kind of facade, this kind of ornamentation, let's call it like this. And conceptually, this element was related with the Orientalistic decoration that conform and mark really the identity of the historical building. But this element, it's not at all an ornament. It's a technical element made in prefab concrete with a very, very sophisticated carved, let's say like this, that permit to create brise-soleil for the exhibition in the upper floor and also hide all the technical elements that this type of building have, no? Etc., etc. So it's, as I say, is an element that assumes different meaning. From one side, conceptually related with the historical building, from other side has different technical meanings. No, you can notice here the facade with the brise-soleil. No, and in this last image, you can discover and understand how the building, the upper part, is very compressed, very compact in some way, and this continues underground. No, and you can notice also the importance of this very small, let's say, public space that create a kind of plinth, no, in which it's deposed and it sits the upper box. Just one last comment. We made with the same, let's say, carved surface also the loading dock. And this is a little bit the secret, a technical secret of this project. Because in order to reduce the building, in order to achieve the right scale, in order to get more public space and the right measure in this context, we propose to use the foyer as a foyer, the most noble, important part of a building, but also has a loading dock. So during the night, the trucks enter through here and they park in the middle of the foyer. And the false ceiling that you have seen into the foyer is not a decoration. It's an element that permits to extract all the gas or the smoke of the truck. So we are really interested into, as I said, to every aspect of the project should have more meaning, respond to different necessity, and also create different or unexpected synergy between different programs. And this is an example, no? The most noble part with the most dirty part of an art museum. No? And this permit create very compact building, very efficient, in which every part is absolutely necessary. In the same year, in fact, we won this competition 9 months before than the Fine Art Museum in Cours. We worked in the Fine Art Museum in Lausanne, in the French part of Switzerland. This is a completely different project. The idea of the competition and the authority was to create in the middle of the city, in this area here, you can see in the bottom part of the image, very close to the train station, to create a new, let's say, quarter or district for art. The idea was to place in there the 3 most important museums that the city have: the Fine Art Museum, the Design Museum, and the Museum of Photography. So the idea, exactly here you can see the entire site, very big, more than 2 hectares, occupied by several industrial buildings from different period. And you have to pay attention of this historical building here, this one, because it was not a big, interesting piece of architecture, but maybe it was an important element that characterized this place. It was a kind of former warehouse for trains, for the maintenance of the trains. So when we started the project, it was the initial condition. And after months of work, instead of thinking about just the architecture, we tried to organize first an urban strategy. And we started to put our attention not just in the building, but first try to define the public space. As I said, our architecture are just modeled by how to organize the public space. So in these initial sketches, you start to notice that what was important was not just where to put the building, but the central esplanade, the central plaza that has in some way able to link this quarter with the plaza in front of the train station. So this simple diagram defined the urban strategy in which really the core is this elongated empty space, and the architecture, it is just the frame of the public space. So well, this is again the master plan that we presented with the 3 museums, and our project was this elongated element, that you can see in the bottom part. So after taking this decision to first approach the project from a urban point for a broader view, then the architectural project arrived very easily in some way. The project just, an inhabitated wall is an element that is able to divide the new public space from the railways that are placed in the behind of the building. So it's a kind of limit in some way. Very, very simple. But if you notice here, there are some protuberance that appears in this bar, and these protuberance are some fragment of the pre-existing building that we preserve and reuse and integrate it into the project. So if from one side for us was very, very important to open this central plaza, let's say like this, and for this reason we remove several buildings, from other side we thought that the memory of a place, of the identity of a place, could be restored by the preservation of a series of fragments that create a kind of constellation into the sides. Now, for the reason, for example, you notice some industrial element like this, this element at the beginning that was an old element for the trains, the protuberance disappears, then you will see that. So it's another way to give continuity to a story in some way. In this type of huge transformation, because for a Swiss project, a very large project, it's very easy to lose the character or lost the identity of a place. And this strategy permits to us, at least, to preserve in some way this very specific condition of this place, the reality of this place. So the project is a simple elongated blocks, very permeable from this facade, for the north facade, and very opaque from the other. And again, is a very specific building. So here is in the middle of a city is a kind of industrial area dedicated to the trains, the station, etc., etc. And the building at the end is a kind of industrial building. It's a container for art made entirely in brick, like all these old fabrics. But again, what is really important here is not only the building, is this plaza, this this space, that permit to rediscover this entire area. Then the project is a frame of the public. So as I say, we kept we preserve certain element. In this sketch you see this element of this old building with a very beautiful arched window that becomes the main motif of the building. From this side, the building is completely opaque for regulation that exists in Switzerland. You cannot open any kind of window towards the train if connected with the gallery, let's say like this. But that small pre-existing element really became the starting point of the architecture, the element that links the project and root the new project in this place. So from that side, the project is very opaque. From the other, this kind of enigmatic building is very open, very porous. You cannot notice it because there are all these vertical elements made in brick, but the reality is that behind this there are very large openings that permit to introduce northern light into the gallery, and especially the ground floor. It's almost completely open. So the ground floor is very simple. So this structure, again, is a kind of, it's 150 meters long. I don't know in feet how it is, but it's very long. It's just composed by a sequence of different core that divide all the function. And the ground floor is a kind of extension of the public space into the space. So, but you notice the entire plan starts with this protuberance, which is the element that give a link with the memory of this place. So from the other side there is this portal, you enter, you cross a very compressed space, and then you discover this new foyer. And this image for us is a kind of manifesto. It's what explain visually what is for us this idea of working continuity with something. An existing element, this beautiful arched window facing south, that was the most emotional element of the pre-existing building, has been transformed, and it continues to be the main feature of the new building, but completely reinterpreted in some way. So being continuity means for us staying aligned, but also create a deviation. There is always a gap in some way, and this is what is permit to architecture move it towards future in some way. Some other images of this space, there are the stairs going up, go a little bit more quick. The brise soleils on the northern facade introduce a very beautiful northern light into the gallery. And again, like in Cour, you notice how this building is built with just 5 cores that create vertical connection, divided the space for permanent and temporary exhibition. So the entire complexity of this type of building is solved in the most simple and synthetic and dense way, in some way. The main characteristic of the gallery was this, the light that arrived from the roof, which was very complicated because the building was placed west-east, so the light arrived from the longer side. And these are some images of this gallery. This is one of the biggest galleries in Switzerland. It's more than 600 square meters. But it seems that this roof sits effortless into the gallery and permits to enter a very beautiful light from the north. So these 2 projects for us has been very important, and the last image that to explain that everything, it sits above an in situ concrete plinth, and then it's built in with this kind of brick, which is essentially, really, it's a clinker, because technical things, but anyway. So these two projects for us has marked really an important moment of the practice. No? We learn a lot to do that. And the evolution of these ideas, in some ways, appear in this new museum that is the first time that I present it as a kind of new project, because in fact is not yet finished. We will finish in 2 weeks. It's again, it's not exactly a fine art museum, but it's related with art in a city that is called Kortrijk in Belgium. And it is an extension and restoration of an old, very beautiful abbey. No, you can notice here the abbey is this one. So here, there, and there, this element here. So has been heavily transformed in the 60s and 70s. He lost completely its identity. They made a very big disaster, let's say like this. So, but it historically grew with a sequence of pavilion that has been attached one to the others. No? So, and these images represent one of the most beautiful parts, which are the dorms for the monks, no? And I'm facing this another very beautiful park in which there are rest of old walls, etc., etc. So we started with this condition, and the project has been very, very simple. We have tried to understand the story of this place that has been composed by aggregation of simple pavilions, and we, in some way, we just had a new pavilion to the complex. No, in these sketches, and we have again tried to interpret it, which are the identitary element of this place. So the urban strategy has been very, very simple. With the position of this new element, we were able to reconfigure in the old cloister, and also to manifest the presence of this new museum into the park. So the model that clearly explains the juxtaposition of this simple element, and the new pavilion essentially is conceived as just a roof, is a shelter in some way. It's something related with all these other very inclined roof that characterize the chapel and the other dorms and all this part. So here you can see the relationship of the new pavilion to the park, which mark a presence, but also has a very precise urban value, because permit for the first time to cross the new cloister and exit into the upper street in some way. Now, again, this idea to make a public building which is really open and permeable and for the public. So the strategy, I say, has been very simple. From one side, we carefully restored the historical element. No, you can notice we had new walls and one new core, etc., etc. And then in the new pavilion, we put, let's say, it's a kind of flexible space called kind of living area for the city, which is a kind of restaurant, but also bar, but also a place for exhibition, lecture, etc., etc. So, and here some images that we took two weeks ago. You can see it's still not very finished. We will inaugurate in 2 weeks, so we are a little bit in late with the landscape, but we will arrive in some way. So from one side, we restore, for example, we have remade the entire a big part of the wall facade using old brick, because it's been destroyed with this intervention in the 60s. We really carefully, that one, make very punctual intersection, as you notice here, for example. Now we insert the new core. So from one side is very delicate, the most sensitive approach that we are able to have, and from the other side appears the new pavilion that mark are clearly present into the parks. No, the park, we will finish also the park in a few weeks. So, and suddenly, what in a way is really the continuation of the story that we started with the previous museum. For me, when you see this type of relationship within the new pavilion, the old pavilion, there is this, it appears this kind of continuity in some way. It's a completely different things, just this kind of very monolithic, a little enigmatic piece, new piece, but in some way it speaks, at least for me, the same language in some way. No? I speak about it's a kind of roof in some way. No? It's related with the materiality of also of the old roof, and the environment is very beautiful. There are two very important churches. You can notice also these pinnacles that appears there. So it's in some way we really strive with this project to integrate it in the best way and of this sensible environment. And I think this project really describes very precisely in what we are doing right now, conceptually speaking. So the interior, this is the interior of the pavilion. There is this huge contrast. It's all in reddish tone. It's not finished here. It's full. But the idea was to relate this place with historical halls that exist in Belgium, no? Heavily decorated in many cases. No? In the historical chapel, there were, in the 60s, they put 3 floors in the middle of a chapel. We take out the structure, we kept just the element, and we transform in a new art space with a very simple element, using curtain, preserving the structure like this, and using the curtain to filter the light. Also, the project has been a very low budget project. Other part that we have restored, just restored. But again, here there is a secret. They asked for 2 state-of-the-art gallery for visual art, and we placed it in under the 2 courtyards in some way, really in order to keep it free, the building above, and create public space again. So it's similar strategy like Kur. So in order to that, and this is the lower level with the 2 gallery spaces, and the intervention has been very difficult. You notice we essentially suspended the historical building, we curved down, and we made this type of intervention in order to create these 2 very pristine gallery for visual art. And then from outside you don't notice anything in some way. No? This project has been a continuous moving between history and future in some way, and the transition between the doors and the pavilion, no, which is this is looking towards the doors, this is looking towards the new pavilion, is manifest a little bit the continuous movement of the project. The entire building is not exactly brick. It's essentially it's a recycling brick made by the 70% of waste from industrial construction. In fact, the aspect was a little bit very like a crystal, no? And we cut it the brick in order to achieve this kind of materiality. So the last 2 projects are 2 projects that currently are we are working at the office. I will present it very briefly. So one is in the Fine Art Museum for a city called Göteborg in Sweden. Has been a very important project that we won last year, I think 2 years ago or something like that. So in this image you can see the historical center in the lower part of the image with this kind of water that divided the 2 cities. And at the let's say at the end of the 19th century, they create a huge extension of the city, and you can see there is a big street here. Can I mention this one? Oh, sorry, this one, and arrive here. So they create this big avenue, and at the end, following the let's say, the idea of the Nordic classicism. They create a kind of acropolis. They will end this very big urban axis with the Fine Art Museum, and on the side the theater and the opera. No? It's really a kind of, let's say, acropolis, also because it sits above of a hill, no? In some way. So, and this is the building. It's a very massive, too massive, very impositive building made in, I think it's 1930 or something like that, no? For an universal exhibition that was there. So, and this was intended really as the ending point of this very long and important urban axis. And on the two sides, right and left, there were the theater and the opera. So it's not a very interesting piece of architecture. It's like more a mausoleum than a fine art museum, very positive, and etc. etc. And the interior is typical of that period. No, this is the upper floor, sanitary light, just to give a sense of the proposal. The site of the competition was just behind of the museum. They wanted to increase the size of the gallery behind of the museum. And what maybe you can see here very clearly, and this is an image of the back part of the museum, which is really for me much more interesting than the very formal and impositive main facade. And also between the front facade and the back facade, there is a big difference of, there is a huge slope and a difference of more than 10 meters or something like that. So here the building is much more lower, elegant. You can see the arches, because originally was planned to have a courtyard, then has not built this courtyard. So the central facade was really a facade made to be an exterior in some way, no? Like this. And also here you can notice some rocks that appears there in some way. And from an aerial view, you can notice how there are two very different conditions. The formal one, looking towards the opera and the theater and the axis, and behind there is a residential area, very nice, made by small houses in brick, with a lot of vegetation, etc. So in some way, the building, the museum mark really a distinction, a clear distinction between these two urban areas. So for us, instead of making an object, or no, many of other competitors really made a kind of how to say, isolated and freestanding building, we started to think that was much more interesting to highlight the original facade and work with an identitary element of this place, so the geology of this place. What's really fascinating here, no, are these rocks that appears on the top of this hill, and is the reason also why they put it, the Acropolis, in that position. So these sketches explain that we wanted really to work with the organic of this area, where the organicity of this way, with the vegetation, etc., etc. So, and instead to make, let's say, a freestanding building, we made a very discreet and simple building, a kind of plinth, which is connected with the original building through a light yard. No? And also in the model you can notice the relevance of all the topography that surround the building and permit also to how to say, to insert the building into the topography. So, and here you can see the building, and barely you can notice it. So the fact that the museum marked is different between these two urban areas is the starting point of the project. We wanted to preserve the character of this more residential area and don't disturb it in some way. And this is the main street in which you approach the building. And this is the facade that I presented at the very beginning. I don't know if you remember, no? But in some way, the same vocabulary, the same language, the same elements that exist in the original building are also present in the new one, but are completely independent in some way. So the facade is divided in three. There is the same width in some way, no? And also here you can notice how we do not interfere with the presence of these other houses in behind, no? And yeah, this is the relationship between the two buildings. And here is a general overview of the proposal. So rocks, topography, the fact that we really wanted to preserve the presence of the original south facade towards. And then for sure, when you make a project, and I say that we wanted to interpret a context, but what's a context? In a context, exist many realities. There is a material, there is a physical reality, but also there is a kind of imaginary reality, of literal reality, no? And for us, for example, in the same way that when we made the Philharmonie in Stettin, we had in mind a certain expressionist architecture, no? The Philharmonie is located close to Berlin, and this type of architecture in some way mark also the architectural history of that place. Here for us, the presence of one of my favorite architects, which is Sigurd Leverens, has also influenced the design. Suddenly appears this vertical, strange elements, which are the skylight, like in the church or the churches of Leverens, in which they create this kind of unstable element. No? The building is very simple, just a plinth. No? But then there are these elements that create a kind of transition or distortion, let's say like this. So, and the building for us is able to establish a dialogue with the physicality of this place, but also in some way with the discipline, with the other architects that operate in that area in some way. Mm-hmm. Also, there is another subtle difference between the building. We wanted to build the museum using the same brick of the original, but create a much more big and rough joint. No? Again, leverage, but also is a methodology, a material element that permit to create continuity with the original building, but also give it autonomy and independence. No? And this central skylight, which it's used for the atelier, marked clearly this access, no? This urban access also from behind. But the presence of the original building is still evident. No? So everything is the same project in some way. The project is very complex. I don't have time to finish, but everything is solved with this. This is the current state, and this is, I'm sorry, oh sorry, and this is the second. Again, there is this programmatical approach. We organize all the new exhibition area just in one level, in this one, here. Instead of taking the gallery in different level, we said, okay, all the new gallery are placed just in one level, and in the upper part, what is visible are really the service area, the atelier, etc., etc. And in this way, and all is about how to enter from the original, let's say, from the historical plinth, cross the tunnel, and go up. So this is a restoration, refurbishment of the old foyer you enter to the tunnel and you arrive into the building, and the light arrives from this northern light will arrive from the top, and you will go up and you arrive into the light yard, you can see. And also again the geometry very well related with the original building. And in the upper part you can see all the galleries are located just in one floor, and this permits also that the visitor understand that there exist two types of museum, the historical one and the new one. And this is the light yard. This new public space will be open from the side, you can cross it, and really an exercise of balancing the new building and the historical building, no, in some way. The last project, in 5 minutes I will tell you this one, is a project that for me is really, I don't know, it's a project that I really like, which is probably one of the first projects we will build here in the US, and it represents for us a new opportunity to work in a context in which we never work, and is very different from the European context. No? So Ulite Art, let's go. It's very sensitive. Ulite Art is a no-profit foundation dedicated to promote young artists, and it operates in Florida. And essentially they wanted to build a building which is an artist residence to host around 20 artists and offer them studios, and create also a very important educational program for community. The mission of this organization is to transmit to the society the importance of art. They want to create community. They want to be good neighborhood, they say. No? So they want to promote young artists, and also they have this kind of social mission with the educational program. So it's located in the north of Miami in a district called Little Haiti. And you notice the site is along the railways in a very harsh environment, full of warehouses. It also is a little bit a dangerous neighborhood of the city, but there is a lot of art gallery they are moving in that area. So these are the streets around the site, just to give you a feeling of what we have. And our plot is exactly on the right of this image. This warehouse will be demolished. So very low building, warehouses, a very precarious and temporary environment. We never worked in this way. So all the projects I presented is now were, let's say, based in the relationship with something. But here, how to operate, how to build architecture in this condition. And the strategy for us, I think, this is an interpretation that I received from a professor in Italy. And he told me, look, Fabrizio, because you didn't have a context, or the typical context in which you operate, and in this project, you have built not a building, but your own context in some way. And is exactly the strategy that we adopted. So very briefly, how to create community, how to create this space for artists, but also for the neighborhood. The first idea was to create a garden. We are in Miami, we have the possibility to create this kind of exuberant garden. A room that contains a garden. And also we understood that this project was essentially the repetition of very simple basic form. What's a studio, an artist studio? Just a room, maybe with a window, and maybe, if it's even better, if this window is north oriented. No? So it's a room with a skylight. And this has been a kind of epiphany in this project. We understood that starting with a very simple element, we were really able to produce an artificial landscape. So these are study model of the office, and we just using this cell, We just tried to create a landscape, an artificial landscape, to create this contest that we didn't have in that place. No? And so we started to rationalize the position of this room, make it more systematic in some way. And then we started to organize the entire building along the side. Also, this was quite radical because the client was shocked because they had the freedom to build 14 floors, and they expected really a vertical building, but we decided to go horizontal because it was for us a better way to create community and permeability into the project. So we create this new access in the short side, which is the main entry, and we have created this kind of interior, let's say, garden that cross all the building. So step by step, starting from this isolated cell, we create essentially a kind of plinth, continuous plinth, in which appears all this tower, essentially skylight in some way. It's really the creation of an artificial landscape more than an object. And this promenade is ended with the auditorium located in the lower part. No? You can notice here how you can move essentially through the different cluster here. You can move here. This is all the public garden in some way. You can enter through here and through the north and south side in some way. And at the very end, for us, this is a kind of village or small town for artists. And I like it very much, this juxtaposition with the downtown Miami and the new village for artists. A very simple structure, just. So it's a kind of a little bit an enigmatic things, apparently very hermetic, but is very permeable because you can have the main entry from west here, the main facade, and you three opening towards north and south, also because there was a requirement of security, let's say like this. But what I think has been important in the process of development has been that at the beginning these elements were, this tower were just skylight. But as I told you at the beginning, every element of our projects must have more meaning. They should be really necessary. For sure, a skylight is necessary, but what can we do more? So, working with engineer, we started to use this element in order to create a very complete bioclimatic system. So, a system that controls the climate in a passive form of the building. So, some of these towers are really skylight, looking north. Some of them are solar chimneys, looking south. Some of them are wind catcher that they take the breeze that arrive from the ocean, which is not from far away, from east and so. And some other are water tanks. So all these elements started really to create a device in order to control in a passive way the climate of the building. So at the very end, we tried to really go for a passive building. The client didn't accept it because it's still very difficult, I think, here in US, especially because of the cost of the energy, transmit to the client the importance of this climate strategy. But at the end, even if we continue to have an air conditioning system, we will use all this system in order to have natural ventilation and permit to reduce the use of the air conditioning, essentially, because all this strategy permit to create a natural breeze and ventilation into the building. So the building at the end is displayed with all these technical object that appears above. The plan is very simple, composed by 7 clusters. Every cast they have 4 or 5 studios, and there is also a gallery, an auditorium, library, etc., etc. Everything in one floor, and you can enter into the studio through a porch, kind of enclosed garden that permit to enter to the no. And this is the sequence. This is the main gate in some way, which you enter, and when you enter, you discover that the context, the landscape in that were missed in some way. The idea is to use to create this garden using just autochthonous vegetation and this let's say tower and etc. that appears there create this kind of place that for us is a it's at the same time very public because the people can enter and move through the organization, but also at the same time is very intimate and private for the artist in some way. Other views in this one, you can notice on the left there is this big door which is really a porch that permit to enter into the cluster, and these are some other views, and you move and you will end it the promenade into the auditorium. So, and in some way the project is different because the contextual conditions were different in some way, no? And this really an explanation of our research about make specific architecture and try to avoid generic architecture in some way. The porch that in which you can enter into the studios and the studio, the artist studio, which the two main elements. Every studio has a window looking into the garden and the skylight that take light from the north. The main gallery here, and this is a night view, and because and probably this will be in the future one of the main let's say view of the building, because the artists like architects like very much to work during the night, and if there is just one light and lighted, this means that there is one artist working during the night. So I finished. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Sure. There is one there.
Can you raise your hand if you have a question? We'll be happy to help.
Oh, thank you for the fabulous lecture. I have a question. So it seems like that your project has a strong connection or sort of reinterpretation of the history. And also this idea of continuing. So I've had this guess of do you think that architecture, when reinterpreting history and also making it possible for continuing, does that mean that architecture in some way is timeless?
How to say? I truly believe that architecture has some fundamental, no? And these fundamental are, let's say, timeless in some way. So from one side, I think it's architecture is a discipline like biology, in which you have a lot of references, a lot of models, a lot of wonderful architects that made wonderful things, and you can learn using and study it, and it's a kind of big luggage in which you can take things in some way and can reuse and can interpret it, So, and there are some fundamental aspects that continues to exist in some way. But from the other side, for us, it's really important to reinvent things every time in some way. I don't know how to explain. In this last project, for example, there are very, let's say, classical idea, just a garden or an enclosed garden, no, or this idea of a simple skylight. No, these are something super basic, no, but in the way in which you can reuse this element, I think could be very innovative in some way, no, and I think we always our architecture is always in between the past and the future. Let's say like this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lecture. Wonderful to hear you unspool the complexities of things which appear initially quite simple, but in fact are quite involved with a sustained look. I'm curious about your attitude toward the ground. So often there are kind of spaces secreted away underground in section. That's often where a lot of the complexities are buried, particularly in relation to existing buildings. But then there's something very different going on with just the actual surface, which you often seem to treat as kind of like a chessboard or a marked surface, almost like you've sort of drawn on a plane to designate the kind of position of your building with respect to others. I'm sort of curious about that. The way the surface of the earth is treated is very, very different than the kind of complexity of the section. And I'm wondering just talk a bit more about that attitude to the ground.
Yeah, I think so. We aspire to create really a civic building. No, I try to explain that really on the ground, let's say, on the floor, we really try to. There are always certain things. We try to don't consume space. So, and we always make apology of the compactness. All our buildings are really try. If we are able to build less, we try to build less. So, and we always try really to reduce the footprint and make the ground floor. So here, the first floor, let's say like this, very permeable, very open. We always try really to create something for the community, let's say like this. And then the fact that in many projects we use the basement, let's say like this, it's a very simple but also difficult strategy in order to keep the ground floor free. So simple like that. And also this has certain advantages. For example, I'm thinking in the museum in Cour, for example, essentially the exhibition area doesn't need any kind of they are very stable in terms of temperature. For example, they barely use the heating system and they barely use the air conditioning system. So it's very stable, and even if you have to carve, etc., you are able to take advantage of this, the fact that you are underground. And this, for example, is the same logic that we apply, say, in Kortrijk and in Cour, for example, and some other projects. So from one side, I think it's important try to don't use too much space, especially in places very consolidated as the European Historical City Center, for example. And then the other is that we are able to take advantage in terms of the sustainability of the building. I think these are the two major, let's say, strategy, and I think that how to build touch the ground and how the building is related with the others. No, so for us it's very important. How to say, even if certain projects you can understand it as just object, that just block, the Swiss project, for example. We always understand the project as an ensemble. It's absolutely crucial, the space in between the different buildings and how they are related one to the others. No? We always really strive to create a urban ensemble. Let's say this is maybe important.
I have a question on this side.
Thank you very much. The vocabulary you used in the beginning, especially the word continuità in Milan, is very much connoted in Italy, the post-war Ernesto Rogers, where the idea was that there is some critique of modernism, but the modernist project needs to continue. And in a sense, what your work shows is that you managed to do it perhaps even better than Ernesto Rogers, and that modernism is very much alive and very much pertinent today. Mm-hmm. Despite the critique that we have from a lot of living architects today, I'm thinking Thomas Heatherwick, etc. How would you defend the values of modernism that you want to perpetuate in the 21st century?
Well, very interesting and very difficult questions. I don't know if I'm able to reply. I think, as you perfectly notice, in Italy, the word continuity has a huge meaning, let's say like this. And this, I think it's, I'm very attached to this word, also because of my background. As Rosanna say, I studied in Venice, in the period in which Tafuri and the others stayed there, and the idea that architecture just a part of the urban was very much present in that way. So I think a big part of our methodology of work is like this because of my background, let's say like this. And I don't know, I think I continue to, so this is one part, and I think how to say, maybe this is a little bit political thing, political issue, but I, for sure, modernism create wonderful architecture and etc., etc. But there is also certain modernism that create a very critical situation in certain cities, in certain, no? I think step by step we are, for sure, we are defending modernism, but at the same time we start, I don't know, to be a little bit critical with certain intervention that modernism made in the city, especially in Europe, no? Which I know better, no? So, and I think it is important to preserve the identity, as I said, of the different places. And there are certain modernist strategy, I think, in about general master plan or several intervention in architecture were really understood as an isolated artifact in some way that I think it's really create problems in certain places. For example, our project in Kortrijk, the block, no, is a clear example. No, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, I didn't present some images. There was a kind of modernist building, let's say, that was super invasive in some way. Really, it doesn't pay any kind of attention of the historical abbey. In fact, they create a kind of it was an elongated blocks that perforated the historical church in some way, not just an example. And I think this is, I don't know, for my understanding, this is, I don't know, we need to go over this aptitude. And our project really start from the opposite point. We really try to uh, to preserve in some way the essence of the place, even if the approach it's quite radical. So if one day you move there, looking this new building is not very discreet, it's just there, no? But at least in our judgment, let's say that, because then architecture, everyone interpret it as it wants, there is really a kind of logical sequence between all the elements that create that ensemble, no? And I think for me, it's a really important position that architecture should have these days when there are projects related with this type of context. I don't know if I explained, but more or less.
I have a question. Thanks so much for your lecture. Slides not working.
No, exactly. Wasn't my fault. Eh?
I really love this idea of either through exterior or interior void that you create social and civic spaces around the project, whether it was inside of the lobby or around the project's perimeter. It felt really powerful. And across all the projects you showed, there's an incredible level of consistency on plan, where and also it's interesting that you see yourself is very simple but it's very sophisticated. So you have this, whether it's about contracting programs or consolidating the boards, that you create this hierarchy. But it's very surprising to see the project in section where sometimes it's very muted, but sometimes it's very radical in terms of how you arrange the programs. And they're always very short. You tend to talk more about the plan than the section, and the section always seems to be only explaining how the programs are arranged in a way. So I was wondering if you could, like for you, it's more of a question of myself. Would you be able to tell the story of your project more through sections than plans?
I don't think so. I think we really don't done things in plan or.
It's the other way around.
It's not.
More the formal, maybe historical instance of plotting symmetry, orientation, sections all over the place.
Look, for us, it's, I don't know how to explain. So in the process at the office, we always start with, but just to tell you very simply how we operate. We really start at the very beginning with just massing. Just try to discover through a very simple massing study model the right position of a possible building into an environment. And we only work with, it's a kind of continuous test of different options. And we really always work just thinking in mass, in volumes, and how they can be related with the other part. Then for sure, the plan has a kind of, let's say, so from one side, I think we don't, I don't know how to say, maybe the section is just a consequence of the volume and the plan organization. We are not able to explain the project only through section. But this is also not true, because the Göteborg Museum is just a section. In fact, I think I started to explain the project just using the section. It's all about how to move up, how to bring light, and then in that case, the plan is a consequence of that section that's related with the historical building. So for this reason, I have to say that honestly, I don't know how to answer. Both are equally important, I think. I don't know if I understood correctly the question.
It was gratifying to see the last project where you literally came up out of the ground. I don't think there was anything underground in the Miami project.
No. No, no, no.
And it was building, to my mind, that was much more expressive as an object, as a visual, something to be enjoyed, ponder, if you will, try to figure out what's going on and the way it related in the last photograph to the skyline of the city and the distance it had a texturality in that relationship. Whereas the first building that you showed, when you started showing the plan, which I think, and I think there were some drawings of elevations too, that were very clearly tripartite. It seemed related to the Palladian model, if you will, of buildings that you showed in context of that. Then when those elements wound up only in plan, and I think I'm correct about that, I could be wrong. It seems as though they manifested only in plan, and all of that plan was below the ground. And whatever visual elements that there were that related to the plan, the windows, all the openings, all the complexities, were hidden behind the atomic screen that was created as just very pure and ponderous geometric form, which seems to negate any of the contextuality that it seemed you were trying to refer to in the very beginning in your drawings that related to classical type of architecture that associated with black house.
Mm-hmm.
It was your reference. So it just seemed very, the fact that you were able to come to Miami, which had only for context just one-story buildings that could have been anything, that you were able, I thought, to be free enough to really express what was going on in the building, how quickly to the public.
But for sure, there is a huge difference between these two projects that you mentioned. No? Is that absolutely true that the project in Miami started with a very different condition from the other that all the other projects that I showed, and maybe in this case the project is much more related with a programmatical idea, no, than a contextual idea, contextualistic idea. Let's say in this way, no. We started. So in some way we really didn't have any kind of references, and for this fact I really enjoyed to work on this project, because for us marked a kind of shift in our work in some way, no? But this, at least I understand this like this, it's only because of the different context in which we operate. I don't feel that we has been more freedom in Miami than in Kur, for example, the other project. I think the first project, it's conceptually speaking for us, it has been really one of the first projects in which we start to think, let's say, in a more consistent way about this idea of working continuity with something, no? And I don't know, the relationship with the architecture of Palladio, which informed the historical building, the idea of the decoration, which is very important in that historical building, and we transfer into the new building. Conceptually speaking, for us has been really the starting point of the project. So for us, this idea of continuity is not merely visual, but it's more abstract, more subtle. Let's say in this way. I don't know how to explain in another way.
Hi, everyone. First off, I wanted to say thank you for your lecture, and I particularly appreciate the sensibility of your work. You talk about the resolution of the multiplicity of realities. And I have to believe that there's another version of your lecture where we don't talk about the formal or civic or cultural qualities of your work, but a particular sense of effortlessness to materiality. And I'm particularly interested in your take, your relationship on that sort of, say, like sprezzatura of your understanding of material, right? That the reduction of the detail and the erasure of sort of seams and methodologies of construction produces these particular realities of the interior that are alluring, and also similarly they generate an affinity for a place that feels there but not. There are worlds outside of our own that are constructed. So if you could speak to your relationship to materiality also. I think we've talked a lot about culture and form and sort of structure, but I'm really interested in sort of the material and techniques of your work.
So there are many architects in which, I don't know how to say, they are more related or they feel more comfortable to use certain type of materials because these materials permit to create their imaginary, in some way. In our case, the materiality, it's just a consequence of what we, of the relationship that we want to establish with certain element. So it's the materiality in some way is it's something that permits to intensify the relationship with the context. And we always understand the materiality in this. So more than the materiality, let's say the materiality of the building. So for example, the fact that the museum in Lausanne it's in brick, like all the buildings that were there, or the museum in Belgium, the Kortrijk, is with this brick made by waste, for example. Or the fact that the Miami building originally was planned in rough concrete are all a decision that try to intensify the relationship with the context. No? So the same form of the Kortrijk Museum with another materiality will be absolutely not the same. No? So the materiality has a crucial aspect in this absolutely a crucial aspect. Also, the museum in Kur, which is created with this prefab, very big prefab panels that has been carved to create this kind of bas relief. It's a crucial element of the project because it permits really to go into this idea of ornamentation that was really related with the historical element. No? So we really intended the materiality in this way. So we always tested many possibilities and we go for a materiality really can produce this kind of dialogue with the environment. This is, I think, the major strategy behind it. This doesn't mean that for sure that again, structure in our project, the structure is always very absolutely clear, but is not. We never reveal the structure, for example. No, structure is always a support for the building, and then we use the materiality to yeah to establish this dialogue with the context. We always working. For example, there are other examples that I didn't present today, but for example, in one of the very first projects we made is the Ribera del Duero headquarters, that has been mentioned. We made the entire building in stone, but not just a simple, let's say, cladding with a simple cladding system, but we really built the revestment with 12 centimeter of piece of stone in order really to transmit and give the sense of density, weight, no, like other building in that area, for example. Or, for example, in another project we made in Italy was a small school. If you look in our website, it's an absolutely almost anonymous building. So we made a project that was absolutely anonymous, just a wall that with a garden, nothing, because we're just a complementary element of. In that case, we just used the simple, very basic mortar, let's say, like all the other houses of the village. So the strategy is always to find the right material that permit to resonate with the environment.
I wanted to go back to the project in Miami for a moment. You started off by talking about this idea of continuity. Think back to that before. The project in Miami, you talked about needing to create a context, working in an area that didn't have the kind of urbanity that you're used to responding to. And I was wondering, to what extent or how does that project of focusing on continuity, thinking about how to embody that in your architectural intervention, play into the work you did there? Obviously the horizontality, rejecting the opportunity to build up and going horizontal is perhaps one example of that, but I'd be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I think this project has been very, very challenging for us, no? Because Mark, but also, for example, is a project that has been really important for us, and hopefully we will start the construction soon. So I think when we presented the project, this is a little story. There was a old lady in the presentation, and he told me, "You're the architect, very nice, the building, very nice. It looks like a warehouse with towers." Maybe it's there in some way. There is a kind of it's really, I think, in our understanding, resonate a little bit also with what we have around in some way. It's the same logic at the very end, no? And just a box, a warehouse, a little bit more elaborated, let's say like this, and has also this kind of a little bit industrial feeling, no? And I assure you that if you move around that side, there are railways. I don't know if it's just simple warehouse with air conditioning on top. This kind of just basic things, no? So maybe I explain myself I explain it not correctly. So I say that there's no context. No, this is a different context. Always exists a context. Always in every part. It's just to interpret it. And even a very banal and a very obvious and a very, let's say, auto-construction that exists there, it creates its own context. It's the reality of that. And just to open the eyes and try to see carefully what we have around. Thank you.